and welcome to RageBait. I am your host, Commander After 40, coming at you late because I have issues. But don't we all have issues? And that's why we're here. So today's episode is about men's needs, why men need women and why women want men. And I've come to the conclusion that our society has bred these men. I don't think that men naturally have a need for women. We do have a need to reproduce, though. This is very common for men and women to confuse needs of reproduction with needs of companionship. Because in actuality, we don't really need to reproduce. It's just a chemical reaction in our bodies to do this. And we can't ignore them. But some of us, we really can't. We want to reproduce really badly. And we confuse that as a need. And let's be clear, it's not a need. We do not need to reproduce. Okay? Is it necessary for our reproductive, cycle, like to continue on the race? Absolutely. That is true. We do need to reproduce in order to continue the race. But as a individual, no, it's not necessary for our survival. We as individuals do not need to produce another human being into this world in order for us to survive. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about the real elephant in the room. Men needing women. It is an identity crisis that we're dealing with right now. The identity crisis is that we've been handed this script for several years that a man has to grow up, find a woman, get married to said woman, have kids, and for the rest of their lives work in drudgery in order to show their love and support towards said woman, and having that woman stay in the home. Now, who told us this was okay? Who in their right mind said this is how human beings should work? Well, the elite did. The elite said that this is how human beings work. Because in order for the elite to remain the elite, they need servants. And servants, by golly, cannot revolt if they have a script. And we've held on to this script for thousands of years, mind you. I don't know a single man who hasn't said in one form or another, I cannot be a man if I'm not providing for a woman. A woman is a gold digger if they don't do as I say and say as I do. Again, elite scripting. A lot of brainwashing, a lot of propaganda. But let's be clear on something. I don't think people understand how much of a performance being a masculine person is. You've been told your entire life that you have to be a certain way in order to perform a certain task because you have certain genitals. And if you don't perform those tasks, your genitals mean less. And then therefore you are less. And if I tell you that is not true, your cognitive dissonance just suddenly triggers. Just immediately goes, no, you're wrong. Obviously you have a uterus, so you can't understand. Duh. You're one of those gold diggers. Well, let me remind you that the gold digger concept literally was ingrained in us the same way everything else was ingrained in us. We seek the value of men because that was the only way we could survive. Okay? So if men were conditioned and trained to be consumers, and so, in other words, have to buy women, why are you complaining about the gold digger? Okay? I'm serious. If you were saying that this pretty thing you wanted so bad to complete who you are is only after your money, then what's the big deal? You've obviously made it. Okay? Because out of all the men who can make money, she chose you. Or she could possibly end up with somebody else who makes more money, thus being more masculine, am I right? But obviously that's not the case anymore. Men and women can make their own money. It would be probably more accurate to say that if a man is dating a woman, he's the gold digger. Because he's only seeking the woman for commodity. for a need, for their survival. Sound familiar? Sounds like a role reversal to me. Sounds like that red blanket that used to be wrapped around little boys is now being wrapped around little girls. So, what does that mean in our society right now? It means that our loss of identity is now coming to full swing on the opposite direction. We now have women who hate men for all the wrong and right reasons. And we have men who've completely lost their identity because they were conditioned to not have one to begin with. Okay, the emotional intelligence is so damn low that I can honestly say that peasants with their reading averages have a better IQ than these men do these days. Okay, let's be clear on that. If a man has even the slightest form of empathy, he's already ahead of the game when it comes to his reproductive chances. All right. If he's able to have a sit-down conversation with another woman and actually listen, have actual listening skills, he's already ahead of the game when it comes to other men. Now, there is this interesting book that I read recently, and I wanted to do a book review, but I don't own the book. In fact, I rented it from the library, and let's just say there's a reason. There's only one copy in the library, and why it's always available. It is called Manning Up: Why the Rise of Women Has Turned Men into Boys. And it's basically this dichotomy where it's saying that the rise of women's education, their STEM, their ability to make cognitive decisions, financial decisions, has created entire generations of men who've lost their identity and have created what is now known as the child man. Now, what's the difference between a child man and a man-child? A child man is a man who participates in childish things. Okay, so that means playing with Legos, watching Dungeons and Dragons cartoons, playing World of Warcraft, enjoying what is considered childish things. Whereas a man-child has the emotional integrity and attitude of said child. No self-control, is very entitled, very me versus them mentality. So that's the big difference you got to take away from this. The difference between a man-child and a child man. And this book, Manning Up, is very specific to the child man. Apparently, women who have decided to grow up have created a generation of child man. But the child man really is a product of society. Society has taught men that they are worthless unless they are productive, and that they have no other worth. They have no other worth. They are not intelligent. They are not compassionate. They lack any of the proper nurturing skills necessary to be what we would consider a helpful member of society, unless they have kids, have a job, and work themselves to death for a woman who is only after them for their needs, or the gold digger, as they often label them. But now that dichotomy is no longer necessary. Women actually do now want emotionally intelligent men who provide a nurturing genetic, if you will, who actually want to be around their kids, who want to play with said kids, who will actually teach them, who will provide a financial stability where the woman can still pursue their financial responsibilities, that both of them can actually help each other in the relationship rather than being an obstacle in their said relationship. But we still have to deal with this generation, right? We still have to deal with this group of guys. I'm going to call them guys, okay? They're not men. They're not even child men, okay? I've met child men, okay? And let's just put it this way. It's a very rude description of a man who has found an identity and enjoys a hobby, okay? I'm just saying. You can't be faulting men for having a hobby any more than you can fault a woman for having a hobby. And you have this dichotomy of men who are going around saying, if women don't need us, then we don't need them. They're just a product. They're just a means to an end, and we should treat them as such. And as such, they become worthless. you treat something as worthless, you're basically saying to everyone else that you yourself are worthless. If you don't have strong boundaries, it's because you don't respect other people's boundaries. The thing about psychology, and again, Google's free, but the problem with Google is that it's AI generated, so it's only going to cater to your preferences. So to look outside your preferences, you're going to have to take a bigger step forward than just whatever AI says to you. Okay? But the point is that in psychology, you have this dynamic where if you do not respect, if you do not show, if you do not go and forth and such like that, you're really doing it to yourself. Okay? If you're unhappy, if you are causing misfortune, you have to recognize that it's you who's doing it. Now, are there circumstances outside our powers that cause us to be miserable? Absolutely. But how we show up is what counts. How we give ourselves the opportunities is what counts. Okay? What we control is our responsibility. And if we chose to blame everybody else and not take on our responsibility, of course we're going to live miserable, poor lives and have nasty expectations of the other. But luckily for all of us, especially here on RageBait, we don't have to live like that. Okay? This outside the box experience, we don't need to go through that. And men, I'm talking about you guys, you don't have to live like that. Okay? You don't have to constantly live in a reality that tells you that a woman is a commodity. You do not have to base your entire identity on whether or not you get laid. You, as a person, have value. Whether or not you want to see it yourself, however, is on you. And yes, it's very hard for individuals to get outside of that. There's this one story that I enjoy a lot, and it's about the eagle who's raised by chickens. An eagle hatches in a chicken farm. The chickens, they raise them as a chicken. The eagle doesn't look like a chicken, obviously, and it wants to fly because it can. But the chickens around him keep telling him, "You're a chicken. You can't fly. There's no way. There has never been a chicken who can fly." The eagle then never learns to fly until one day a bunch of, I don't know, birds that look just like him say, "Hey, you're an eagle. You can fly." But the eagle doesn't believe these weird-looking chickens. He says, "No, I'm a chicken. I can't fly." So the moral of the story is that when you're surrounded by a bunch of people who say no, you're going to believe them. And then when you see a bunch of people who believe what you believe because they look like you and they say, "Hey, you can do it," you're more likely going to agree with the group that raised you. So, I'm just saying, Mr. Eagle, you can fly. You can soar. You don't need to believe these chickens. And the fact that you do doesn't make you stupid. It just means that you have a longer way to go. And yeah, so the moral of the story, do men need women? Do women want men? I think the real question is does society want strong individuals who will say yes or no and have a thought in their heads outside of their AI boxes? And the answer is no. No. The structure that does not want men or women to be independent thinkers who can think outside their AI boxes. Men need women is more of a question of, do men need to think outside their AI boxes? And yes, they do. They desperately do. Men are more than capable of doing great and marvelous things. There's proof that men can do great and marvelous things because they're human. That's why women can do great and marvelous things and do horrible, terrifying things too. But the fact that we continue to have this gender bias, these stereotypes, is what's keeping us from being great. None of us are great because we choose to look at our gender and say this and that and stereotype. I don't think men in general are horrible creatures. I think men are human. And if you think human beings are horrible creatures, then you have a right to believe that men are horrible creatures. But you gotta realize, you gotta look in that mirror and realize the projection is real. The school board is calling. They want their projector back. A man is defined by what he can do in society. But really, it's what humans can do in society. And until we start looking at each other as human, I don't think there is much hope left for this generation. And the next generation might not even get born in time. But there is hope in this. Perhaps when we do start reproducing again, because we will. I don't think humanity is completely desolate in that regard. We might end up with men and women who see each other as equals and not necessarily as needs. That's my time. Thank you for listening. I know this is a short episode, but guess what? I have to do what I gotta do. And I am so grateful for each and every one of you for taking time to listen to this episode. I want to thank Dead Nexus for the awesome tunes for the intro. And I just wanted to let everybody know that they're doing a concert later this weekend. And if you want to look them up, go ahead. They're on my board, and you can just look them up. Just look them up. They're great fun. And I just wanted to say thank you to just, being here is so awesome. And I promise more episodes. And I promise more timely episodes. I might even do some lives. It's a work in progress. As the new year comes along, I'm hoping to bring you some more insight. And we're all growing. And I hope to continue growing myself. So, as always, my chums, take care, and we'll see you in the next episode.